Welcome to Tech on Deck, a podcast series focused on the critical business challenges facing B2B tech firms with an emphasis on enabling technology. I'm George Humphrey from TSIA. I'm joined by Joe DiPaulo, the CEO from Accelo. And today's topic is revenue discipline for profitable growth. So, Joe, thanks very much for taking a little bit of time out of the day to chit chat with us. Obviously, this is a fascinating conversation. Wild times in software right now. So focus on revenue growth would be pretty cool. And it does, I think, require a lot of discipline right now. So maybe just opening up, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about Accelo?
Yeah, that sounds great. Thanks for having me, George. I really appreciate it. And as you said, it is a wild time in professional services and software and delivery and everything that we're seeing evolve here. But as you said, I'm Joe DiPaulo. I'm the CEO at Accelo. I spent the last 25 plus years, both in web-based technologies and entrepreneurial roles and helping lots of different types of businesses grow and scale. And that's really where we're focused at Accelo. We're a modern professional service automation platform that ideally helps our customers with insight into their how they're delivering their services, their rigor, how they can do that better and do that at scale. So that's kind of the quick and skinny. And like you said, it's certainly a fascinating time to see how both technology and services businesses are growing and moving into the future of PS.
Yeah, I think so. This PS conversation is really hot. I think a lot of people thought for a while PS was a relatively commoditizing sort of business, but with the explosion of AI and all the debate over the last mile, it's really brought PS front and center. We made a set of predictions in a blog last fall, and one of them that I put out there was PS becomes the most important line of revenue in tech. I think it's what's going to really fuel and power AI. So yeah, great time to be in PS, great time to have a focus on professional services automation. So just curious for you, when we talk about revenue discipline, what does that mean in the modern context of professional services? So why is it more important than ever? We alluded to some of that, but I'd like to hear you unfold that a little bit.
Yeah, well, to tie it into some of the TSIA research, I mean, you guys have clearly done a lot of research and emphasis on describing PS 2.0, right? And you talk about things like productizing services and making delivery more optimized and accelerating and figuring out how to leverage your what you can do internally to deliver more. So, from my perspective, revenue discipline ties into that really significantly. It's you know I think historically we've thought about revenue or revenue discipline as a financial metric, and I think it becomes, as the service organization evolves, much more of something that has to be managed throughout the life cycle of not only the delivery cycle, but how you're selling and managing and pricing and building out your service offering upfront. So that whole life cycle needs to tie into your focus on many metrics, including revenue and revenue discipline. And as you guys have called out, the top performing organizations consistently, outperform their peers on margin, their rigor in their operations, how closely they can tie their financial metrics and revenue to their service delivery, their pricing models, those kinds of things. So, that's kind of how I look at revenue discipline and how I think it's affecting the modern PS organization.
Right, and probably more measurable line of sight. So I say this quote all the time, but Sir Lord Kelvin said, "One cannot improve what one cannot measure." So I think it's really critical to have that line of sight. Another little point is we recently merged together our CRO research with our CGR, so Chief Revenue Officer research with customer growth and renewal, because what you just put on the table, we're now managing a revenue life cycle, and customer success might be focused on the customer journey, but how are we focusing on the revenue journey and measuring that? And I think PS is obviously right at the very beginning of that, and I'm not sure it ever completely goes away throughout the customer life cycle. And we're in this. Obviously, AI is going to come up throughout the conversation today. I don't think there's a conversation in tech right now where AI isn't part of it, but I think we've gotten past the hype cycle in AI, we're actually seeing real world use cases, real ROI. I think last year's paper from MIT and NANDA, where they said 95% of PS AI projects aren't delivering an ROI. I don't think that that's any longer the case. I think it's really this AI is reshaping revenue economics and PSI economics as part of that. So, how should leaders think about AI as an amplifier for revenue discipline rather than it's not just a silver bullet? So, can you maybe elaborate there for me?
Yeah, I'm 100% with you, George, on the MIT paper. I mean, I think that it was early on in that life cycle, and they were measuring the progress to date, right? But we're now seeing more, at more of an inflection point. We're seeing more ROI coming from how AI is being leveraged, and that's across many industries. But from a PS perspective, the two top of mind things for me are AI should really amplify the data within professional services organization, and like you said previously, it's tying into that entire life cycle. So as organizations can be more predictive about their work, as they can optimize their rigor and the things they're doing, and they can get alerted to risk points or issues on their delivery, or do things to catch those anomalies earlier. That's certainly been sort of the first and initial wave from my perspective for AI. The bigger and more interesting thing, and I think this is what the conversation's evolving to regarding AI, is AI should be what's driving organizations, and particularly professional service organizations, to scale without adding significant amounts of headcount, or at least not the same amount, right? I mean, historically, professional service organizations, if they won X number of new projects or X number of new customers, had to add Y number of new people, and we're certainly seeing that AI should simplify, or at least reduce that ratio that's required for them to productize their services, deliver consistently, and deliver honestly faster. And as you talk about CS and growth kind of coming together in services world, it's exactly that. I mean, they're like SaaS did, a decade or two ago. The recurring revenue model becomes more and more important, but in order to deliver that to your customers, they have to be happy with the outcomes. Those outcomes have to show value incrementally along the way, and I think as many people look at the world now, AI is going to help businesses scale and deliver on that promise and deliver on that execution. So, and it's super, super exciting. I mean, I'm seeing this transform our business from a tech delivery perspective. So it's happening. It's happening everywhere, and it's exciting.
Yeah, it's very exciting. I mean, what some of the things you just touched on make me want to toss in. It's not really a curveball, but we talk about how important AI is to businesses and professional services, but how about how important professional services is to AI? So we know some of these AI native companies like OpenAI with a $2 billion professional services business is really using that to drive profitable growth rather than hoping that models will eventually get them an APIs, or Palantir knowing that it's a service led motion and that starts with all that consultation and design. Can you say a little bit about that? How, from your perspective, you see a lot. You see a lot of different PS organizations. Do you think they understand how important PS is to a successful AI deployment?
I think enterprises are coming around to understand that, right? I think the initial generation of LLMs and AI capabilities have been very open, right? And that's why we've seen a lot of experimentation with individuals and side projects and developers doing, so, projects on the side, that kind of thing. I think it's hard when we start talking about adoption of AI within an enterprise or within multiple, departments or verticals within a company to figure out how to scale that and figure out how to take advantage of it. If it's everybody's doing that independently or in silos, they're not going to realize the value. And maybe that's some of what the MIT paper was getting at initially, as it was a lot of disconnected approaches there. So I think a lot of PS firms are racing to figure out, how can I help my customers adopt AI and use that better. And I think that until there's no, there's no standard that's winning yet. I mean, there's a lot of technologies out there, but I mean, every day you hear the next model's coming out from Claude or from Chat GPT or Gemini or whatever it is, right? And what's the tool set? And within my company specifically, we're certainly adopting tools like Cursor and Claude and using those, but everybody's looking for recommendations. Everybody's trying to figure out, how do I scale that? And ultimately, services, businesses that can partner and provide expertise on this and proven methodologies and proven ways to implement and take advantage and drive change management and make these systems fully trustworthy is super important. And I think the services organizations that can help deliver that value to their customers are going to make a huge difference, and those customers are going to see massive value from that. So I think, to your point, it's that expertise is everybody's looking for that expertise, and professional service organizations can certainly deliver on that promise, which is exciting.
Yeah, we just did a recent survey last week, and I think the data was over 40%, maybe 41% of forward deployed engineers in companies today. Very AI, new, flashy role, but they're in professional services organizations. And you were right to call out on that MIT report. Everybody loves to beat it up. I beat it up, but most people just read the headline. They didn't read what you just pointed out, which is the reason why there are so many failures, because there are. I don't know if it's 95%, but there's a lot. It's more than 50%. And it's because there's not the proper consultation, design, AI readiness, data readiness, model modifications and adaptations. And so that's PX. That is right at the heart of every successful AI deployment. And you teed it up for the next question, which is around professional services 2.0, and it's moving more towards value and outcomes. We've been talking about outcome engineering for, gosh, over 10 years now at TSIA. Before AI, it was very hard to prove that you could deliver a particular outcome repeatedly. And it's not just about delivery. There's growth is a big factor. So with all of these things now coming together, how does revenue discipline fit into this transformation we know every company has to go through?
Yeah. Um, I, I guess I look at my own experience. I mean, I'm a buyer of services, or my organization is, and it's certainly easier for me to evaluate vendors and when I can understand the outcomes, right? Versus the time that it takes to deliver something, or effort, or those kinds of things. And it's also where I see value in that relationship. Did I achieve the outcome I set out to? And is that measurable? So when that's well defined, it ultimately creates a better customer experience. For service organizations, they've got to be pretty disciplined to understand what's their cost structure, what are their delivery disciplines, what kind of guardrails do they have, if there are any challenges that are going off course, or scope creep, or those kinds of things. How do I course correct? So, in my opinion, that model, that's the PS 2.0, that's focused on outcomes, is ultimately needs to have the organizations doing that raise the bar for their rigor, for their discipline around operational rigor, but and revenue ties right into that, as we talked about at the beginning. So that shift towards that recurring revenue is can't be done loosely, just like these AI projects can't really be done without any governance and any methodology or thought up at the beginning of it. So that's where tools like PSA tools like ours help from a guardrail perspective, help drive consistency, help scale as these businesses grow.
Yeah, it's actually you hit on something I was just going to ask, which is so as PS organizations, as they wake up to this fact, it's hitting them right in the face that they've got to transform now. There's new ways of delivering professional services. And I'm going to guess maybe in the past they've come to you with a lot of technical requirements. Are they coming to you more now as a trusted advisor, like help? Like, how can your software help our professional services organization go through this transformation? And not just the technical parts, but how do I streamline the business? How do I make sure I'm balancing long-term operational maturity with sort of some of the short-term revenue control requirements. To me, it feels like it's got to be equally business and technical conversations we're having with you.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I mean, everybody's trying to figure out how do I take advantage of tools that are going to make my organization more efficient and scale better. And how can I think we're looking at a world where professional services organization paired up with these technologies, whether it's PSA type platforms or AI platforms. How can they leverage that to make their business repeatable? We look at for software development, professional services organizations. A lot of them are talking about spec-driven development, and so how can we help them, leverage that to build out build out how they deliver to their customers and do that in a repeatable way. The same is true for, um, you know, creative agencies that are building content or building creative outputs. I mean, the more that the technology is combined with that leadership, they're asking those questions. How do we best do this? How do we uh, pay for this in an appropriate way? How do we leverage this to grow our business? And there's a lot of questions too, I would say, about change management now as well. Like, how do I roll these things out within my organization? And how can I do that most effectively? We certainly tend to suggest starting with smaller groups of people to frame out your methodology and then grow from there. And I think that's, again, a model that we use internally with our teams that's implementing and supporting our customers to get them up and running on our system where, they're an in-house professional service organization, and that's what they're doing today, and coaching our customers through that. So it's the same kind of thing for these professional services businesses as they're out working to deliver for their customers.
Yeah, really interesting. So I was just listening to, I think it was Yahoo Finance, and there was a gentleman from Sequoia Capital on talking about what he thinks the future of software businesses are. Everybody's freaking out over this SaaS apocalypse,
Yep.
but he said, no, SaaS isn't going away, but it's more of a foundational layer in the stack. And he believes that the future of software companies is to become services companies. And so, as a PSA software company, you just unfolded there that you're actually providing consultancy services for your PSA software to PS organizations. So it's pretty wild times.
Yeah, it certainly is wild times, and it'll be interesting to see how all this evolves. I think the tools that provide backbones for businesses in terms of how they operate or have a significant amount of data that's important for their businesses are certainly going to be important in the SaaS world as we go forward. And maybe some that have at least at the B2B enterprise kind of level are going to have the most they're going to be more sticky, right? They're going to be more beneficial. And that combination with AI tooling, and I think that's what all these SaaS vendors are racing to do is how do I deliver this in the construct of how I operate my business, in the construct of the data that I have in my business, and how do I then leverage the AI tools in conjunction with that? And that's certainly how we're looking at the world. And I'm with him. There's the SaaS industry is going to change and evolve. It's not necessarily going to go away, and those who don't evolve are going to be in trouble. And same for professional service organizations, right?
Yeah, and it's happening so fast. So what you're really talking about there is these value anchors that whether you're providing software services or the combination of both, there's these value anchors, and we put out a series of insights and reports and frameworks on marching up this value to outcome ladder, and we firmly believe that's where this is going. And so the next question we get as people start going, I think you're right. That's what our customers are asking for. How do we price it? And how do you think about revenue discipline and revenue strategies and pricing and value? What's your take on that?
Yeah, from a revenue discipline perspective, you've got to ensure that revenue reflects your delivery reality, whatever that is for your organization, right? If you don't have that pricing correct, if you don't have a good way to indicate to your customer how and how quickly and at what cost you're going to deliver for them, you're going to get out of whack. You're going to see scope creep. You're going to see the wrong resources assigned. You're just not going to have a clear picture. So, again, um, making your model as consistent as possible and leveraging data that you have in your toolkit is going to drive those more positive outcomes, better client experience, more repeated business, and that's going back to what I said at the beginning. Why we look at revenue discipline is not just something that's something the CFO or the accounting team is talking about, but something that has to be layered in throughout the cycle, whether it's for your sales and growth organization or your customer success and delivery organizations. They all have to understand what that means, how it plays into their day-to-day role, and how to, course correct if there's issues that are occurring. So it's certainly something that's important across the entire business.
Yeah. And ideally, I'm a big tools guy. So ideally contained in a center of truth, so that there's no debate. Everyone knows where, scientifically go to for the data, the insights, the pricing, the structured services, engineering and standardization.
Yep, yep, yep. The roles that you need, and how to project what your proposals should be, and how to ideally show incremental value along the way. Make sure you're aligned with your customers and you're seeing kind of the um, proactive view of the world in terms of revenue and revenue discipline.
Yeah. Amen. Okay. So I know we're getting short on time. I have one final question for you, but it's kind of a big one. That's a really important one, which is cultural and technical transformation. So there's revenue discipline, which I would argue most organizations still lack in today's day and age. They still lack it, but it's as much about a cultural transformation as it is technical. So, what leadership behaviors and governance models do you see organizations that consistently achieve margin control and predictable growth? What do you see them put into place?
Yeah, same. Some of the same concepts I've been mentioning here. I mean, high performing organizations, I think, keep revenue discipline at the core of their leadership behavior and
Mhm.
activities. So, the best customers and firms that we see here have moved certainly away from retrospective view of the world, or looking at what did I invoice for, what revenue did I have come last month, versus what's happening now, what skill sets do I need 3 months from now, how do I organize my business. It's a much theoretically, and what we're seeing in practice with those top end customers is that forward looking rigor around their entire set of operations and delivery process, but revenue is at the center of that, and leveraging the data to in their workflow, in their delivery cycles, to help them support that. So I would say they are also, those organizations have um, culture around that kind of ownership and accuracy. I mean, that happens at the leadership level, and then it permeates down through the organization. And anytime there is any variance or getting off course from that initial goal for delivery, or for their revenue targets, the whole organization is aware and on board with course correcting and solving, and early early detection on those drifts. So, the other thing I think we see is just not only communication, but standardized definitions from leadership levels across, how they do their work, um, how they deliver, how they look at their goals and their metrics, and those are things that culturally I think reinforce the discipline, revenue discipline, rigor, and kind of the whole team understanding the economic consequences of what happens when you get off course, or when there's unexpected staffing changes, or scope creep, or your margin starts to shrink. Those kinds of things, and hopefully technologies it enables that. It's not something that's passive and, like I said, providing just reactive information. It's something that can be leveraged for prediction and driving internal operational excellence, and driving that revenue discipline, and allowing leadership teams to culturally move from reactive to proactive, and And then the next part of that is to leveraging AI to help them really scale to the next level.
Yeah, I have to reinforce everything that you just said. Again, it's not technical, it's cultural. It starts with the leadership, it pervades throughout the entire organization, it's embedded within your systems. And for the people listening, I can't say it enough. The gravity, the importance around this topic is huge. Just go have a conversation with your CFO. Don't be afraid of them. Don't avoid them. I used to do that in the past, but and then I would say, well, no, you got to make them your best friend. But all the decisions are tied directly to this revenue discipline, this revenue optimization today. So the topic is timely. The subject is of critical importance. And so Joe, I appreciate you taking the time to talk through this today. It's at the top of mind for us at TSIA. It's at the top of mind for all of our members, and I know for fact the community at large. So thank you again for your time, and for the audience, thank you for participating. And we hope to see you soon on the next Tectonic.